and pick up of younger students and ensuring students get into the building safely. We're all concerned about that. We are planning to have multiple drop-off and pick-up spots around the building. For some students, it will be at the back of the school building, and all you have to do is walk through the drive at the far west side of our building, walk up the drive, drop your student off at a back door. There will be no cars in that area. We have identified at least 5 pedestrian pickup and drop-off spots, and in addition to having our bus traffic come into the Circle Drive and come in the main door. So we're working really hard to have lots of places for people to come, and then we'll also have a lot of staff there to greet your student. When your student comes to the door, we will make sure that there is an adult there to help them get into the building and help them get where they belong. What staff will be doing that at this point, we haven't determined, because we need to have some ideas about numbers, and we just simply don't have that information yet. So this was kind of a long question that I copied and pasted here. What is your plan for instruction for face-to-face students who need to be home due to quarantine or isolation due to COVID-19 exposure or illness? We are going to be utilizing 2 main learning management systems. We call that an LMS. And the learning management systems at the elementary school will be Seesaw, which some of you may be familiar with, and Schoology. Teachers will be able to upload information, resources, links to assignments, and all of those things. So we'll be able to help support our students that way. We, of course, are only a phone call away for students who are involved in our face-to-face learning who want to get those lessons sent home. What's the plan to make sure students don't fall behind? We will make sure we support our students in the times that they are absent. Is there any plan to provide videos of classroom instruction that would be posted on class websites so that students will not be so far behind? We are not planning to use classroom videos at this point, simply because we have to protect all of the students' rights, and there might be some information about students that would come over a video that's filmed live in front of a classroom. But we do have other resources, and some teachers may be able to provide those videos. But when they're teaching classes, it's also difficult to do that remote piece. What happens if a child removes their mask in the hallway, or if they have a meltdown about a mask being on? These are really important questions, because masking is going to be a big issue for us. If a child removes their mask in the hallway, we're going to ask the child to put the mask back on. We're going to treat masks this year as a piece of dress code. So if a student takes a mask off, we're going to talk to them about getting the mask back on. If the student needs a break, we're going to give them an opportunity for a break. And if a student has a meltdown, we're going to get them to a safe zone, possibly outside with another adult, and we're going to give them a break from the mask. And the plan is just to keep working with students to help them. Once people get used to masks, and children especially, they're pretty flexible about learning that routine, and they're going to be able to wear a mask for longer periods of time. We're not going to do anything that's going to give trauma about mask wearing. We're going to be kind, compassionate, reminding gently, and we'll be talking with teachers and giving them some instructions and some training prior to school starting. How much you're considering outdoor space for certain classes when weather permits? We are certainly considering outdoor space for learning, and we have a committee that's working on that, a work group that's working on that here at the elementary school, and we've identified a couple of places where we're going to have more permanent outdoor spaces for learning. We've ordered some picnic tables. We've designated these spaces that will be places in our grounds that are not going to be likely to be interrupted. So we're not going to be meeting on the playground, for example. And so we're going to encourage outdoor learning. Does it have to be in one of those 2 spaces? Absolutely not. We have lots of places on our grounds where classes can go for outdoor learning, and we're going to encourage people to do that. We're going to encourage them to keep windows open. We're going to encourage them to take a break and run outside for a few minutes if they need to. So we're certainly going to use outdoor space for learning, and we're also going to use it for taking some breaks. How do you intend to enforce protocols if students aren't compliant? Well, we're going to try to work with the student and help them understand. If we are unable to get students to comply to the things we're going to be asking. If we've done it in a reasonable way, we're going to get parents involved, and we're going to try to work through things to help students understand why it's so important. If students refuse, then we'll probably be looking at encouraging some virtual learning, going home for the day, taking a break in that way. It's really important that everyone's safety is ensured, and so we are going to do the best we can to enforce compliance with simple social distancing, masking, hand washing, those types of things. It appears there are two options, 100% virtual versus 100% face-to-face. And many families would appreciate a third option that might involve a compromise to allow students to spend days at home learning virtually and some days in the classroom. Is this a possibility? This would be the hybrid that we've talked about. And so you have a chance to weigh in on that in a survey when we get finished. One of the difficulties whenever you start to look at plans that you're going to do is that you have to realize what your abilities are in terms of being able to administer those things. And right now we've determined that we can do the 100% virtual and the 100% face-to-face, but that doesn't mean that there may be some changes to that as we move forward. What emotional support plans do you have in place for students as they adjust to new learning environments? This is an important question. We will be administering a survey to parents asking how their students are doing prior to school starting. We will have a social worker here in the building all day. In every classroom, they'll be doing a lot with social emotional supports and social emotional learning. We will continue to use our second step social emotional curriculum, and we'll also be using our zones of regulation, which were the color zones that we started working with students on last year. We're really going to spend a lot of time making sure students feel safe, secure, and supported. We can't do a lot of learning if we don't have those things in place. So we're going to really work hard to make sure all of our students are in the right place for learning. You have an acceptable number of substitute teachers available for this school year. We have about 60% of our subs who have said that they will return for this school year. Is that a good number? Well, probably it's going to make things a little bit difficult with substitutes, but we will do our best to make sure that we have classes covered by qualified substitutes in the classroom. We've called all of our subs and spoken with all of our subs over the summer to find out whether or not they were willing to come back. And the number 60% was a pretty heartening number for me. Okay, that was all of the questions that specifically I think had to do with face-to-face. I may have categorized them later in the presentation, so we may have some more of those. But I'm going to go into virtual questions now. So the 100% virtual option, how much does the virtual learning cost parents? It costs parents nothing. It is something that is provided by Frankfort, Alberta area schools in order to make sure we're supporting all of our students. Is the virtual face-to-face option a decision that has to be made based on an entire family, or is this made by the individual child of each family? This is an individual child decision. So if you choose something for your high school student or your junior high school student, or even your upper elementary student that's different from your lower, that is absolutely okay. You do not have to do the same thing for every child. We know kids are all different. And so this was a really long question, and it was a question that basically says, if we are using a remote learning option that involves having our teachers provide the remote content like they would in phases 1 through 3, would we be able to do that? For our virtual learning, that is not going to be an option at this time. It's difficult for a teacher to be teaching both in person and remote at the same time. And so we made the decision to offer a 100% virtual option in order to ensure that our teachers are able to do what they need to do in the classrooms they have in front of them. Can a student take online core academic classes but do face-to-face classes like art, PE, and band? The answer to that question is no. If your student is staying home for online core academic classes because of concerns about the virus, it would not be beneficial to your student to come in to do face-to-face classes. Can you tell us more about the format of virtual schooling? Yes, I can tell you more about the format of virtual schooling. And at the end of this video, there's going to be this survey. The survey is going to have some examples of what the actual virtual schooling looks like. So the virtual schooling, students log in. They will have videos for instructions. There will be, at the lower end, it's geared to to younger students. At the higher ends, you have actual people talking and giving the instruction. You'll have an introduction, you'll have direct instruction, you'll have some practice, and there'll be assessments. We are going to ask our teachers to look at the curriculum and help with determining the core standards we need to present, and we will be offering that curriculum that will match up with the standards that we're covering in school. Will students be expected to be plugged in from 8 to 3 Monday to Friday, or will they work at their own pace and schedule? For the 100% virtual, they'll be working at their own pace and schedule. And how many hours of work per day would this be? It's about 3 hours. It, of course, varies a little bit with students. I understand 100% virtual commitment to a semester, but are we required to make the same commitment to face-to-face? So if a student comes to school and gets very stressed out, do you have the option to switch to virtual at that point? Yes. Until the 18th of September, students will be allowed to switch to the virtual. I feel like there isn't enough information to make an informed decision yet. There isn't enough, and that's why those videos at the end will be helpful. And we'll be having other meetings, so we'll be able to answer more questions for you going forward. How involved will an adult need to be? It really depends on the age of your student. Younger students will need more assistance, direction, guidance than older students. They'll be much more self-directed. Is this a human instructor running this, or computer generated with needing to read what's required or listen to what's required, then do lessons? It is a computer generated lesson program. There are ways that you can have it read to your students so you don't have to have all of the reading done by the adult there. And then there will be lessons that will need to be done. Again, there will be more support needed in the lower grades than there would be in upper grades. Is a human teacher just checking in once in a while to see how things are going, or will they actually do instructing? It will be a human person checking in with students. There will be drop-in times where they can get one-on-one assistance and help with the lessons. And so there will be actual support. There will be social emotional check-ins, meaning we'll make sure your students are doing well social emotionally. The students who are doing 100% virtual will have access to our social worker, and we will make sure that they are supported in as many ways as they need to be supported. Is there a human instructor available if a student gets in a bind and needs additional help or understanding? Absolutely. And we'll be setting up times when you can log in and get that assistance that you need. Again, I can't give you names of the people who will be doing the assistance. I can't tell you how many, because at this point, we don't know how many students will be doing the 100% virtual option. Where can I get information on traditional homeschooling, and will my student still be considered a Frankfort student if we homeschool instead without following the virtual program? I don't have any resources about traditional homeschooling. Usually a quick Google check will help you find that information. But if you are not doing virtual or face-to-face at this time, you will not be a Frankfort student. Could there be an option where a parent or certified tutor mentors a student on a homeschool track with a local curriculum using our textbooks for workbooks and pacing? And that would help make sure that they would be ready to come back. That is not an option at this time because, again, it's very difficult for teachers to teach remotely at the same time that they're teaching a face-to-face classroom. And there would be some significant probably work on the part of the teacher. And so at this time, that is not something that we're planning to offer. But we are planning to line up the virtual requirements so that if a student jumps back in, they'll be able to jump back into the regular classroom very quickly. We understand there are a few canned virtual programs being considered. Can you give us some more information on which ones and how they differ? We've actually decided to go along with Edgenuity, which is a program that the Intermediate School District is also offering as one of the programs to use. We liked the format. We liked the method of instruction. We thought it covered the content well. And so we are going with Edgenuity, which I believe is the same program that several schools around us are also using. Will Chromebooks be issued for virtual education? Absolutely. We will be providing those, and we'll also be providing instructions about how to get started prior to school starting. And just a note, Mr. Teisworth will be posting some information about Pathblazer as a resource in the chat, and that is the name of the Edgenuity program that we're using is called Pathblazer, and he'll share information on social media later this week. Does FES feel their version of online school would be comparable to or better than the experience of attending a mainstream public school online, such as Connections Academy? Will a virtual option student be more connected as a Panther or part of FEAS community if using our school version of online education as opposed to gaining a sense of autonomy and community in another online public school? And I appreciate the sentiment that we want to stay Panthers, but this is a difficult decision to make, and I understand that. Will you be more connected? Absolutely. You're going to be doing Frankfort online school supported by Frankfort online aides and teachers. And we are going to make the biggest connection with your students as we possibly can. And I'll be involved in that, and I'll be helping to make sure that we're doing that piece of it. I don't know about Connections Academy. I honestly don't, and I'm sorry for that answer, but I think that we'll do a good job of trying to connect with your students. Every day there'll be a health questionnaire, and how will it be accessed in the elementary school? In the elementary school, depending on school grade, it will be either a paper form or it'll be something that they will do on their Chromebooks as part of the start to the day. In most lower L classrooms, the students come in, they put their things in their desks, they do their lunch choices, and then they'll do their health questionnaire. Masks and face coverings. So considering masks are one of our best forms of protection, especially if everyone is wearing one, can we consider trying to have all elementary students who are able to wear masks in the classroom during the day with ample breaks? And the answer to that is yes. This is one of the things that has changed since we put out our videos last Wednesday. On Wednesday, the guidance was that we could have elementary students take off masks when they were within their cohort. Since then, we have learned that because we are a K-6 building, we have to follow the higher level of mask wearing, which is that students will be wearing masks all day in the classroom and with specials. The exceptions to that will be that when they're having recess with their cohort, they will be able to take off their masks. And when they're having PE outside or doing outside learning with their cohorts, they'll be able to take ample breaks. And when I talk about cohorts, I'm talking about the classroom. So in first grade, it would be one of the two first grade classes. When they're with the students in the class that they start the day with and end the day with, they would be able to take their face coverings off when they are outside with their cohort. And those are changes per 731 meeting I was a part of at the ISD meeting, and from further clarification from health and legal people. Why are the elementary students able to remove their mask? That was based on information from the school roadmap, return to school roadmap from the governor. But now all students will be keeping their face masks on. Have you thought about face shields instead of face masks? The guidance is that if you are wearing a face mask or face shield, you still must wear a face mask. They don't replace each other. The cloth face covering is going to stop particles from coming out, where a face mask could let them escape and potentially be a concern for others. Playground, masks required. Video stated on all school grounds, and that is correct. So when you are in the halls walking to recess, you'll be wearing your mask. When you actually get to the portion of the playground where you will be, you will not have to wear your mask. And so they won't be required when you are having recess with your cohort. Yeah, we're going to adopt this idea that when you move, you mask. And so when you're going from one place to another, you will be masking. Specials, gym, art, music, do they stay in the classroom and specials teachers come to them? So art and music, yes, teachers will be coming to them with the specials, teachers being masked and the students being masked while the specials teachers are with them. How does gym work with a mask? Most of the time, as much as we possibly can, we will be having mask outside. We will have masks outside, or we will have gym outside as much as possible when wearing a mask, or without wearing a mask, sorry. And so students will be able to be outside and run and move as much as possible. If weather does not allow students to be inside or outside with a mask, they will have PE inside, and they will either do health lessons or things that are minimally exertive in order to make it safe for all students, but still have them have the chance for gym. Will band be virtual because you can't do it without a mask? And at this point, we're not sure exactly what music and band are going to look like this year. And Mr. Joslin is doing a lot of research to talk about what gym or what band could look like, and the instruments could be used, how they could be used. So we're not sure exactly what music is going to look like at this time. We are still planning to have music, and we're going to do everything we can to be the safest we possibly can with music. What does the training look like for social distancing for staff to help them understand it? And again, we're going to do everything we can to really help students understand. We're going to treat them with compassion. We're going to remind them. We're not going to make this a disciplinary thing, but rather a way of teaching compassion and care for other people in being safe. And we're going to have students who get too close to other students, and we're going to kindly remind them that they need to get back. When you're working with small students, this is a difficult thing, and there's going to be a learning curve. But we're going to do the best we can to keep them safe, keep them as separated as is possible. Our masks with a clear panel being considered for better communication, ability to see facial expressions, and help kids to feel less anxious. We are planning to, we have ordered and are expecting a delivery any day for clear masks for teachers. And we'll be using clear masks for teachers at times that it's appropriate. Teachers will be using a face mask so that students can see their mouths while they're trying to teach things like reading and phonics. And for students who have special needs, we'll have to make special considerations about how we try to make sure our communication is the best it possibly can be. At this point, we have not ordered masks for students that would have the clear panels. Building access. What about picking up or dropping off students for appointments? And this question had a lot of questions that were really great. Do we call the office ahead so they're ready at a time, at the time needed to be picked up? Do we wait in the car and we send them out? Is there a way to buzz at the door to talk to someone once we are there to pick them up? Or do we call or text when we're there? So if you can let the office know ahead of time that you need to pick your child up for an appointment, we would appreciate that. That just makes it easier. If you let us know what time you need them to be ready, we can call them from class at the time we need to have them by the door. If you wait in the car, we can have an adult wait with your child until we see you pull up in the circle drive, and we'll dismiss the child through the main doors at the circle drive after school has started. If you want to park and buzz the door and let us know you're there, we'll make sure that your child gets out to you as quickly as we possibly can. I answered this, but I'll answer it again. Will the cohort be the grade level or just the teacher? And it's just the teacher. So we had a lot of questions that had to do with sickness or illness at school. And I'm going to say that we have 2 meetings with the health department this week. We'll have more guidance on that. And we'll plan another meeting to answer a lot of those very specific questions. We did have this one question that said, we would like to know what data and facts were used to determine that face-to-face schooling was a good idea for FEAS schools. And so we used the current guidance from the governor about the phases that we are in. And we're opening in phase 5, but we're using phase 4 protocols in order to be safe. We're using our disease numbers at this time, and we are trying to keep on top of that to find out, how the disease is progressing in our area. We also looked at the needs of our students and parents, but really the data we're looking at is the data that we're getting from the health department. The newest recommendations from the CDC as of July 23rd say have home screening is encouraged and will help caregivers think through the symptoms that should be identified. Once we get all of our guidance from the health department, we will be putting together training for caregivers to help you identify what is a seasonal allergy, a scratchy cough versus symptoms of COVID-19. And so we'll be doing a lot of work with you to try to help make sure we all understand the protocols. It's going to be very important for parents not to give students a Tylenol in order for their fever to go down and send them to school. If there is a fever, students should always stay home. What is the plan in each building for the identification, isolation, and evaluation of students that become sick during the school day? We will be determining a quarantine officer. We will be identifying a quarantine officer for watching students. We have identified 2 potential rooms in the elementary school that we will use as a COVID-19 quarantine room. When students are ill, parents will be called and we will ask you to come pick up your child. If they have symptoms of COVID-19, we will work with the health department to determine whether or not they need to be tested for COVID-19. Who will be responsible for the quarantine room hasn't been determined yet. There will be a staff person deployed to be the COVID-19 quarantine person. We are trying to identify what the training is that's required. In the return to school roadmap, it talks about training for the quarantine officer, and we need to find out what that is before we ask somebody or appoint someone to be that person. As with all of this, we're going to be working with the health department to develop all of our guidelines in order to make sure that we are as safe as possible. We don't have any answer about the school having an idea about the tipping point to close schools. That is something that the health department would be guiding us to determine if we were in some kind of a COVID-19 surge. What's the plan if a child attends face-to-face tests positive for COVID? The plan for that 2 weeks ago is very different from what we're hearing today. And so we'll be working all the way up to school time to determine exactly what that protocol is going to be. And so we will have more information for you as we get closer to the school year starting. If a child is ill with any illness, will a negative COVID test be a requirement in order for them to return to face-to-face instruction? Again, we'll be relying on the health department for guidance with that, but I also think that we're going to be reasonable in how we address those issues. Is there any sort of counseling program in place to help kids deal with the fears and anxiety of the virus? We'll be working with our teachers, with Stacy Kidder, and using our second step program to make sure that we are addressing any student fears and helping teach them with science. So what is the protocol if a student tests positive? My Safe Schools return indicates that anyone who was within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes of someone with a confirmed case of COVID should quarantine for 14 days. So if one student or teacher tests positive, the entire cohort would quarantine for 14 days, correct? Would there be a 2-week packet given to the students for home study? There would be, so I'm going to answer this in pieces. So 2 weeks ago, this was the guidance we had gotten from the health department. Last week, we received different guidance from the health department. So this is going to be a continuing work in progress in terms of determining what the protocol would be. If students are quarantined, if the entire cohort has to be quarantined, they will go to remote learning with the teacher if the teacher is healthy, or they will be given packets or other online instruction if they are quarantined for 2 weeks. But again, we don't know the answer to that because we're still working with the health department. What is the protocol for parent testing positive? Health department is going to help us with that. And so again, that's a question we'll be answering there. Cleaning questions. Is extra custodial staff going to be cleaning restrooms after every use? No, they are not. Cleaning will be conducted every 2 to 3 hours as suggested in the return to school roadmap. Are you absolutely certain 100% of the staff who are supportive of protocols and will enforce? Yes, I am 100% certain of hand washing, masking, social distancing protocols. Prior to school starting, or prior to the middle of July, I made phone calls to every staff member and I talked to them about their comfort level of coming back to school. And I talked to them about following protocols, including masking. And so every staff member replied to the positive there. And we will enforce it. It is part of our job as administrators to make sure that staff are following this. How will hand hygiene be supervised in each building? In each building, we will be teaching hand sanitizing procedures. We'll be practicing with students. We'll be reminding them every time they take a break, use the restroom prior to eating, after eating. They will be washing their hand a lot, and we'll be supervising it in the classroom with teachers reminding students. There were some staff questions. Do you know at this point if all of the FEAS teachers are coming back? As of 8/3/2020, all FEAS teachers and staff members have said that they are planning to come back, with the exception of one staff member. We will be announcing staff changes as we have them. We are not aware of anyone trying to or planning to retire. Again, this is all work in project. How's the staff doing emotionally? That's not a question that we can answer in a public forum, but we will be supporting our staff, of course. As activities and athletics. Are sports, volleyball and football still available? At this point, we don't know for sure. We're waiting for more guidance from the MHSAA and from other organizations. We also have to meet with Frankfort, Alberta Youth Activities, Youth Sports League. If we decide to homeschool, not the school's virtual option, would our children have the ability to participate in school and activities? If you decide to homeschool your student, they would not be our student. And so they would not be able to participate in school activities. Drop-off questions. Drop-off at elementary on Leelanau. Are you considering a staggered start for different cohorts? We are. We haven't figured that out. Again, we have to see the numbers that are coming back and what grades, but we are considering that. Thinking about how busy all of the entrances are for drop-off, and since the front door is no longer an option, all of that normal traffic and humans will be packing in close to the same time trying to social distance. Absolutely, this is definitely a concern. One thing that I'm excited about is that we have a lot more space going down Leelanau and the streets along Leelanau in order to get students in. So I hope that it will be less crowded. But we are considering the staggered start. We will get more information, of course, to you soon. Are you considering having upper elementary students utilize the circle drive entrance to enter the building, thus cohorting those students immediately at the beginning of the day? Yes. We are looking at using the east door, the farthest east door down by the 4th and 5th grade classroom rooms. We are looking at using those for 3rd and 4th grade. We're looking at using the Leelanau Street doors up by the 6th grade for 5th and 6th grade. We're looking at using for grades 1 and 2, we're looking at using the Leelanau grade doors, kindergarten and preschool, using the side preschool door and a back door. So we're looking at trying to have as few people at a door at one time as we are possible to have. Food and water. There were a lot of questions about food and water. Will the school still be providing food for the students? And yes, of course, we will still have our lunch program. If we have, we will have lunches available for our virtual students, which will likely be bag lunches that will be able to be picked up at the high school at the door like previously. We will not at this time be delivering lunches to virtual students. Will water fountains still be available, or should water bottles be brought from home? Students will be able to fill up water bottles at our water fountains. We will have the water bottle fillers open and available. We will not have the spouts for getting drinks from the water fountains available. And yes, water bottles should be brought. They will be provided if you don't have access to a water bottle. The lunches be staggered to allow for distancing. Yes, and we're actually adding a 3rd lunch. So instead of having an upper L and lower L lunch, we're actually going to have a lower L, middle L, and upper L lunch for students. And the question is, will students be required to eat in their classroom or have staggered lunches with 6 feet social distancing? We're still working out the logistics of exactly where students will be eating, whether they'll be eating in their classroom or whether they'll be eating in 6-foot social distance lunchroom and gym, or whether they will rotate and have lunch in the classroom some days and lunch in the lunchroom some days. So we're working on this. We're just trying to figure out the feasibility of this. Will they be able to be 6 feet apart if they're eating lunch in the lunchroom? If we do limited spread out lunches and smaller lunches, they will be able to. Right. Are you going to let kids bring in food to eat from home? Okay. Okay, this question I goofed up when I was editing it. Are you going to let students bring food in from home to eat? Absolutely. Students will be able to bring in their lunches just like they have before. We continue to be a peanut-free and tree-nut-free building. And so students are able to bring in anything that they would like that doesn't contain peanuts or tree nuts. How does this work if we're eating lunch in the classroom? How does this work with hot lunch? We have figured out a couple of different ways that we could do this, either delivering hot lunches already wrapped to the students in the classroom, or having students come down masked and get their lunches and bring them back to the classroom. Again, this is one of the logistical things we haven't quite figured out. We don't have a plan in place, but we are planning to allow students to have hot lunch. Cohorts in the lunchroom for elementary. So at the lunchroom, the most we would have would be 2 cohorts. We would be having 4 lunches, having lunch together at the same time, but spread out into 2 rooms. How much social distancing? We're aiming for that 6 feet as much as possible wherever feasible. Are the lunch periods being shortened to accommodate more lunch? Absolutely not. Is outdoor space being considered for cohorts to eat outside? That's a possibility, and that is something that we've talked about. We don't have any plans set in stone yet for that. Will there be a breakfast program? Yes, there will be a breakfast program, and we will be serving breakfast in the classroom for sure. Will elementary school have PE, and how will PE classes be handled? I talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but I know that I was talking really fast, and so I'm going to answer this one again. They will have PE outside as much as possible, a modified PE if we have it in class. When they are outside with their cohort having PE, they will be able to take their masks off. When they are inside having a modified PE, they will be wearing their masks. Will lockers be staggered? Depending on the number of students who come back, if everyone came back tomorrow, we believe that we can stagger lockers and have some space in between lockers. But depending on the number of students who come back, we definitely should be able to accommodate staggered lockers. Recess. Divided playground and only going with their group. Does this drastically cut down outside time? No. Are we down to one recess a day? We're down to having our recess that we have around lunch, but teachers, as always, can take students out as long as other groups are not on the playground at the same time or using the same equipment. That's just a piece of scheduling. Will the playground equipment be cleaned daily? Yes, with an EPA-approved solution in order to clean the equipment and make sure it's sanitized for the next day. What limitations to play interaction will be there on the playground at the elementary school? For example, will students be able to play games together such as Gaga Ball or Tag? We're planning on zoning the playground into different areas, and each class, each cohort will be able to move to different areas on different days. And so they will all have the opportunity to play Gaga or Tag, just not every day. We'll also have equipment just for individual classes that will be sanitizing daily and will only be handled by the cohort. All right, those are the major questions that I have about things related to school. I have one last question about the school board. Will parents be able to attend the August, and I assume it's a school board meeting, and future meetings virtually to ask questions instead of attending or watch the recordings? For every school board meeting, we have we have a live stream and the ability to ask questions via a form that is submitted. And Mike Teisworth, who moderates the live stream portion with the virtual meeting, will answer those questions. I don't know that we will continue to have all of our future meetings virtually, or whether we'll be moving into face-to-face with it live streamed and the ability to answering questions. But certainly for school board meetings, you are welcome to be a participant in the live stream of the school board meeting. Okay. And so I have two questions here. What changes, if any, will there be to attendance policy with face-to-face learning? I imagine any cough or sneeze would put any of us on edge this year and lead to more absences. We're going to be flexible and reasonable. It's important to be in attendance at school. Obviously, if somebody is sick, we want them to be home, getting well, and protecting the rest of our students. So we'll have to be flexible, and we'll continue to work with the health department in order to get those answers. I am clear on student drop-off and not worried about that. But how will the school handle pickup to make sure that a child just doesn't run off and to make sure they leave the grounds with the correct adult? That's a great question. We are working on the logistics there. But one of the suggestions that I've had, which I really like, is that we would be dismissing on a staggered basis as well, where we have students sitting with their family members waiting, and then we would have numbered slots where you could come up and pick up your kids. You would have adults watching those kids to make sure they got into the right vehicle in order to make sure they get home safely. There are also some apps that some of my principal group members are using that I'm considering using that would help us with that staggering and getting kids out to the right place. The safety of our students, getting into the building is as important as getting them out of the building to the right cars. They're both mutually important. So we're going to do the best we can. And I've said that a lot, but we're going to make sure that kids get into the right cars. And so we will be looking at putting together a very specific system that will help kids get to the cars when they need to get to the cars. Okay. What's the clock thing? Oh, yeah, I was just being told about the time that we have. And so here's what I'm going to say. One last question. What's the deadline to decide if we are doing in-person learning or online? We're asking that you give us an idea of what you're thinking about by the 10th. We just want to get some numbers. Nothing that you talk to us about at that time is in stone. Okay, so we are not going to ask you to make a full scale decision right now. So what are you thinking? What questions do you have? Here's my email address. I am very happy to answer your questions, so please keep them coming. And every time we get questions, in every batch of questions, we get some question that we haven't thought about yet. And honestly, we have asked a lot of questions. We've spent all summer working virtually with each other, working face-to-face with distancing. And so we're working really hard to try to answer your questions. And we want to do this as safely as possible. The other thing I'm going to tell you is that things are still in flux. And so we don't know some of the things that we're going to be talking about in 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We really do hope that we're able to give you definitive answers in 3 weeks. We really want you to know, we really want to know what we're doing heading into that. So elementary parents, we're almost out of time, but I do want to show you this survey that we're going to be sending out today at about 8:15. And so we have this survey. It has several questions. It has an information section. Is my screen still showing? Okay. An information section where we give you some information. Those videos about the 100% options are right here, case 6 and 712. And then we ask you to answer some questions. And the questions may lead you to some other questions. We're just asking to get some feedback tonight. We want to know what you're thinking. We want to know what questions you still have. We want to know what you need to hear from us in order to come back to school safely. So that is what I have to share with you. Please continue to keep those questions coming. Please continue to send me questions and information. Knowledge is important. So please take a look at the survey. Please keep in contact. Please know that my #1 concern is how we keep your child safe, because we love your students at Frankfort Elementary School. And I thank you so much for listening to me talk. And I am happy to answer questions. We have a couple more minutes if there are any live questions. Mike, can you help me with those questions?
We can answer them.
Okay, good.
The children get sick now, do they need to-
That's a great question. We're going to ask the health department that question. And I'm sorry that I keep deferring those answers. We really are waiting for good guidance so that we give you accurate information. Other questions? Yeah, so question about cohorts not allowed together in the playground. They would also be in their cohort. So when kids are on the playground for recess, they'll be in their cohorts. They'll be sitting with their cohorts for lunch as well, whether they're in their classroom, whether they're in the lunchroom. May I ask a question? So we're going to be looking for a detergent that will be hypoallergenic and be something that is safe for everyone to use. If there's something I need to know about your student and their allergy level, please let me know. There was a question about, was there another question about washing masks? You have to, on the buses, sorry, we didn't put that in our slideshow. The only requirement for riding the bus is that you have to put a mask on and you have to keep it on. You have to use hand sanitizer when you walk in the bus. If you are with families, if you have family members on the bus, we're going to ask you to sit together. We know that doesn't always work in families. And so we will be trying to have as much distance as possible and keeping it safe for everyone. So how are you going to make sure students get the same school masks every day? Great question. We're going to put their names on the inside of the mask. The outside of the mask is purple and the inside is white, and a Sharpie will be our method of making sure every student gets the same mask every day. This is what the mask looks like, except that the Frankfort Elementary mask is going to be purple across the front with our Panther Pride across the side. The inside of the mask is white, and so it will be very easy for us to put the name of the student and be able to wash them every day. We've ordered special mesh bags that we will have the students, when they go and get their travel mask, they'll put their travel mask on, drop this one in the bag, and then the bags will get put in the washing machine. And one of my executive things that I'll be doing is I will be washing the masks every day and getting them back to the classroom in the classroom bag washed. Do we have to provide a travel mask? We ask that students come in on with a mask. If they do not come in with a mask, we'll provide one at the bus door or at the school door. So everybody will come into the school with a mask. Sometimes it's more comfortable if students have their own masks. And I'm going to tell you, these masks are super comfortable. They're the best, softest mask that I've had yet. So I'm really happy with the quality of these masks. Can virtual students get a Panther mask? We will work on that. Can we, yeah, and I've got to wrap up here, but can we see what subjects the students will learn in the virtual program by grade? We will be sharing that information out with you. Mike Teisworth will be sharing that out, and you'll be able to take a look at that content, and you'll be able to see the actual product. And so I don't want to misanswer that one. So I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I really appreciate all of the great questions. Keep them coming. My virtual door is open. Please let me know how I can help you make the decisions that you have to make. They're really difficult. Thank you, everybody.